So I graduated from medical school in 2003 and residency in 2006. And so most of my training was in the early 2000s. And I initially did emergency medicine as a general pediatrician and ICU and hospital medicine. So the first time I did general pediatrics, I'd already been out for 10 years. And so this is again 2015, about the time that I joined my first private practice where I was doing general pediatrics in an office. And I joined this practice that had been started the year before I was born, I think. And they had built this really cool office and they had kind of standardized it to like what they wanted. And it was absolutely the coolest little place, definitely 1970s. It was just neat. Every doctor had like their own little office and a bathroom. It was like a door that led outside. And they used to make jokes about, remember the days when the doctors had those doors so that they could smoke? Like just crazy different times, right? So there was always fun stories about this office and just the way things used to be. But there was a few things that always stood out to me that I thought were odd. And one day I asked about them. And those are, there was this extremely well-stocked and well-appointed, essentially trauma bay procedure room in this general pediatric office. And we used it for like circumcisions and, if you had to do, drain an abscess or do staples or something and you needed to clear up one of your rooms. Sometimes we put a newborn family in there. If we didn't have a room for them, we didn't want to send them in office. So we didn't use it. We also had a full, what they call CLIA certified lab. So you could run blood cultures, your own strep cultures. This was a big deal lab. We even employed a very, very highly trained laboratory technician. And then I also noticed in one of the doctor's offices that I would often work in when I was there, that there were these old boxes of spinal tap needles. And so finally one day, I've been there a few weeks and I'm starting to kind of like, what did this office used to be? Did these guys used to practice a totally different kind of medicine? So one day we're at one of our partner meetings and I'm like, guys, what did this office used to be? Why do you have all these spinal tap needles and this trauma bay and this like really big deal lab? And they kind of just looked at me and they were like, well, we used to use all of those things all the time. And I was like, what kind of kids were you seeing in the office? And they were like, Tracy, we used to do spinal taps, resuscitations, IV fluids, gram stains where you have to actually do blood work, look at the blood on a lab slide to determine what kind of bacteria it might be so that you can hurry and get antibiotics in the kiddo before they go completely septic, lose their hearing, and die of meningitis. I said, how many times did you guys have to do that in a month? They were like, every week. They're like, there would be certain weeks, every single week, that one of us would walk into a room and go, oh crud, there goes the rest of my afternoon. We're going to end up having to do a workup on this kid. They would follow them to the hospital because they admitted them as well. Like these doctors, like this was no joke. So why do you think it's so different from me? And that feels so foreign. Because in the late 1990s, two vaccinations came out, Haemophilus influenza and strep pneumococcal, what we call Hib and Prevnar. Those two vaccinations, just in the time they came out in the late 1990s to when I started practicing in the early 2000s, had completely changed the face of medicine and had made this office look archaic and like they were practicing for a different time. Take care.